what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, horrible incident happened in Indiana Department of Corrections. The death of a hero, Lieutenant Eugene Lasco, a hero that was meant to get out there, protect a life, did what he was supposed to do, and unfortunately his life was taken in the process. There's an article that came out recently that discusses Indiana Department of Corrections defending policies in wake of attack that killed one CO and injured another. Now, I was given some limited information, but I think it's enough for us to have a dialogue, especially with the experts I'm going to have on the panel. Maybe we could discuss policies and practices that we're used to when dealing with high-profile inmates. And then with the limited information, maybe we can draw a little bit of a comparison. But it's no way to Monday night quarterback. Maybe it's just to get some concerns out there, rather general, if need be, but in the effort to bring some consistency when it comes to safety and security. Because I think somewhere nationally, especially when it comes to corrections, there's these practices that are just not consistent in nature. And some states are great, some states are not. And maybe this is a good dialogue to see if there's a middle road here. Just in an effort to get this dialogue going, to find some consistency, how we define certain things is different. And then trying to communicate that to another agency to try to bring some type of consistency, it's hard. But I just want to read the article real quick, and then I'll introduce you to the guest. Michigan City, Indiana. The Indiana Department of Corrections said Tuesday that it regularly searches prisoner cells for contraband and provides staff members with protective equipment to prevent knife attacks within its facilities. The department provided a statement to the Times in response to questions about a stabbing Sunday at Indiana State Prison in Michigan City that led to the death of Lieutenant Eugene Lasco, 57, and wounded Sergeant Patrick Schmidt, 22. Lasco's homicide marked the fourth fatal stabbing at Indiana State Prison since 2017. In the three other cases, inmates were killed. The Department of Corrections said it works to prevent inmates from creating makeshift knives by routinely searching cells and cell blocks and prisoners' property for any contraband. All of our facilities have policies and procedures on what is allowed into IDOC facilities and what is prohibited based on safety and security factors. DOC provides staff with protective gear, including multiple versions of protective vests and other items such as chemical spray to de-escalate situations with prisoners, a spokeswoman said. Staff were trained in how to respond to multiple types of situations with offenders, including de-escalating situations and using physical force to protect themselves and others inside the facilities, also said by the department. Details surrounding how an inmate allegedly obtained the stabbing instrument used against Lasco and Schmidt have not yet been released. Lasco was fatally stabbed about 2:30 p.m. Sunday after rushing to the aid of Schmidt, who was attacked and stabbed multiple times by inmate Dimitri Campbell, 38, Indiana Department of Corrections. Lasco and Schmidt were taken to Franciscan Health Hospital in Michigan City, where Lasco was pronounced deceased. Schmidt was transferred to Memorial Hospital in South Bend, where he was in stable condition Monday. IDCOC Commissioner Robert Carter ordered Monday that flags to be flown at half-staff at the department's facilities in Lasco to honor the fallen hero. I also want to mention just real quick, for those that may watch this at a later date, the date of the incident is February 21st, I believe, right? Yeah, February 21st through February 22nd. So let's just get with the guest. Connie, what's going on? How's everything? How's the book going?
Hey, the book is going good. It's still selling. I'm averaging a couple a day, which, the consistency I appreciate. And, there's all these various opportunities that are just kind of sprouting from the book because I guess there's different legs to it, which some of them I didn't even realize, but it's been a good experience so far.
Oh, it's a great book, by the way. Definitely a book that uplifts. Hey, Soto, how's everything with you, brother?
How we doing, guys? Yeah, staying safe, staying healthy, doing rather well as far as the weather. As you can see, I'm trying to keep it lively with my background and, trying to go on vacation. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but we'll see. But guys, again, another hot topic, saddens me to be speaking about another fallen hero, but you know, it is what it is. We're going to talk about what things could have happened or what we could do better, so things like this don't occur again.
Yeah, I love that. This way, when we have a hero die, it doesn't go in vain. You know, there's something that can be learned in every incident, and I think it's through the learning that that hero gets remembered, because through that learning we'll save lives. Hey, Gary, how's everything going with you?
Going well. I'm sorry to hear about this incident. It's a shame that we have to learn from this type of incident. Unfortunately, this hero is gone, and it's a very sad thing. But there are some things that we need to do with this incident. And number one thing is to prosecute this inmate to the fullest extent. And I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Yes, now, guys, if you take a look at this panel, you're very familiar with the show. You can see with the background we got right now. So we got Connie, got that civilian side, got that medical side. Great perspective to have. Also on the administrative side. So we have higher level looking at it. Myself being on the administrative side, but also obviously the roots being an officer and a sergeant. We also have retired Major Louis Soto, who's been through the ranks. Also, key component to all the training that was done in from my agency. So we definitely got a great perspective there. And of course, we got Gary, who is a retired prison inspector. So, I mean, preserving the evidence, maybe to make sure, like Gary said, this person gets what's coming to them. So this is going to be a great topic. We have a lot to discuss. Maybe we'll even talk about some policies in comparison. I may not know specifically what the policies are in Indiana, but I think through our experience, we could discuss what we feel could be ideal policies that, if not in use right now, should be created. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor. When we come back, let's talk a little bit about what happened at the Indiana Department of Corrections. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, and we're back. Hey, guys, by the way, when I posted up the tribute video for our fallen hero, Eugene Lasco, there was a comment from his grandson, basically showing his love and appreciation for his grandfather. And I was quick to remind him that his grandfather's a hero. No question about that. And I think he's someone that we all strive to be every day. So it's sad that we have to, tell this story. But I think it's great to also honor the legacy of such a hero. It takes a lot of courage to do what he did. It's just, it's a tough loss. It really is. But again, this is what defines us in corrections. Now, guys, just to start off, the first thing I want to mention right now when it comes to what happened in Indiana is, obviously, do we think it could have been prevented? So the first thing that we tend to look at when it happens is the layout, the equipment that the officers are being provided, the type of inmates that they're dealing with. And again, having some very limited information, I don't know exactly how this unit is laid out, but I'm going to assume, because I believe that this inmate had a lot of years to do. So I'm assuming it's a high profile inmate, which is probably put in the most restrictive area possible. I would like to say possibly like a close custody unit, so a very high level of maximum security. So if we go on that level, and I'll go to Louis first, what are we looking at? What type of unit are we looking at? What's the layout like? What's the safety and security procedures that you would expect?
Yeah, most places that, have these high profile inmates, and maybe inmates that have that amount of time to do maybe a high risk inmate in the facility, they're usually in what we used to call, and this is when we have to talk about terminology. We used to call them administrative segregation units, ADSEG units. We're moving away from those terminologies and calling them like restrictive housing. But when we look at it and we think about it, it's just a unit that has more control over the movements of the individual inmate, as well as what type of contact they have with our correctional staff. some units are set up in a way where there's a separation between the officer from the inmate, not just by the cell door, but outside of the cell door, there may be a partition, there may be a fencing, there may be some sort of barrier between custody and the inmate population so that they don't have to come into contact as much. Maybe they can walk on that area without having to be kind of secured by handcuffs all the time. They can go to a tier section or a sectioned off area of the housing unit, maybe the shower area, without having so much contact with the staff. Some areas don't, I mean, some prisons don't have that, and you have to walk up to the cell door and actually handcuff the inmate to escort them anywhere they need to go, whether it be to visits, whether it be for any type of rec that they need, or even the shower area. So when I'm looking at higher level containment units, I'm looking for the least amount of contact with staff as possible and some control mechanisms in the way and limited movement from that inmate.
So yeah, I agree. I mean, one of the things that I'm used to is kind of having that barrier between the floor, the officer on the floor, and the cell door. And the reason why I believe that barrier is there, I mean, outside of safety and security, it also helps us facilitate showers or other movements that have to happen that don't require the inmate to leave the tier. And even when it comes to, let's say, showering, like Soto said, there's still a way to lock the mechanism from the outside. So if something happens on the tier and there is an inmate, let's say, in the shower, you can still, control the inmate in the shower by locking them into that one spot, and then you still have access to the rest of the tier. And if at any chance you do have to go on, usually the whole tier is locked down and it's very controlled, 2 officers at a time. And again, usually you get the inmates that are secured, or maybe even more officers, because you have 2 inmates in the cell, maybe 4. If it's a code, 10, 5 and 5. But the thing is, at all times, is to make sure that we outnumber the potential threat. One thing I was never a big fan of, and it looks like from the limited information we got, is for an inmate like that, high profile, to be escorted by one person. I don't care if the inmate's handcuffed or not. As you can tell, a handcuffed inmate can still be a threat. You have inmates that are able to dislocate their hands, pull their hands out. You also have, we're human. Sometimes we think the handcuffs are good, and we think we have them placed right, and they're not. They're maybe too high up and they're able to fall down. You make pull his arm out, or you have faulty equipment. I mean, that's another thing. So I think the first concern, like Soto said and we mentioned, is that kind of that layout. Gary, have you ever worked in any high profile areas like that? And I don't know how it was in your state, but when you're dealing with those close custody unit inmates, what are some of the policies that you have been used to?
Well, Anthony, when I worked as a correction officer for the state and when I worked as a detention deputy for the county, in between those two, I was a prison inspector for 12 years, but I worked both state and county. When we had high profile inmates, they were always coded, escape risk, high risk. We always had codes for the inmates. We always had policies and procedures that said this inmate will not come out of the cell unless you have 2 officers. Now, I'm not going to Monday morning quarterback what happened here in Indiana. I don't know their policies and procedures. I have not seen them. I'm kind of thinking, though, from looking at what happened and the way things were happening with the movement, that this was probably a high-profile inmate that should have probably had 2 officers. That's what I'm thinking from what I'm hearing. I'm not there, so I don't know. But I know that high-profile inmates should always have 2 officers present for the escorts, in and out of the cell, any movement from the cell, handcuffed. And as you said, I've done a video before on handcuffed inmates attacking officers. You've seen them, Anthony. One was shooting from behind the back, where a handcuffed person can still shoot with handcuffs behind the back. I actually demonstrated it myself. Inmates can still take edged weapons and attack you while handcuffed. And in this case, as you said, for some reason, the inmate slipped out of the handcuffs, whether they were not properly placed on the inmate, I don't know. Whether or not they were faulty handcuffs, as you mentioned, I don't know. But this is why, in my opinion, you always need 2 officers on this type of inmate.
Right. And I think sometimes what happens here, guys, is when you have these understaffed facilities, again, I don't know if this is specifically the case here, but again, from the limited information I've been getting, and just want to put the concerns out there. It may not be exactly what happened, but it doesn't hurt to put it out there, because I'm sure there's a lot of facilities that are dealing with at this point, is that when you get so desperate to run a facility, sometimes people just let it run, without realizing the dangers of not having it fully staffed, because maybe there's higher ups that never worked the floor, that don't understand what it means for that body to really be there. So they think that they could run it without that body. And then you got to find out, when you have that front line that's scrambling, and they know why that body's needed, but yet someone in higher up, oh, that's just a number, go ahead. Or even, we don't want to pay overtime. It's not, we could do that with 1 officer. It's funny because when you see a lot of that happening, they staff it, or they feel it's needed based on, well, this would be an unusual occurrence if that happens. But that's why you have those people in play, because we need them there for those unusual occurrences. There was an issue a while ago with when they were doing some cuts. I forget what state it was in, and they started cutting the tower post, because they're like, well, they're just standing there most of the day doing nothing. It's like, yeah, but the tower has a presence. So all of a sudden, when they cut the tower post, contraband started making its way into the yard, because the people from the streets, well, I guess there's nobody watching, we'll just throw stuff in. So sometimes people may not realize that even just the presence deters. The presence deters. So I mean, Connie, you're very good with policy and procedure. I'm sure right off the bat, that, when, if you have, like, again, policy, you have 2 people that should be dealing minimal with these max inmates, and all of a sudden that, you find out that we're short staffed, we can operate with just that 1 person on the floor. Obviously there's a big concern there, correct?
Yeah, that's a significant vulnerable spot for the staff. And I've seen many staff get left, being the 1 person, but I also have seen them make the decision to not actually do some of those activities that make them vulnerable, right? So part of that is, even if you're left to kind of be there on your own, you have your judgment that you have to use, especially if there's some question about, should you do this? And my thought process is, this guy is in for 17 years for a 64-year sentence. Automatically, I'm just thinking, why was that person being moved, like, with just 1 officer, right? Like, I've had to go into maximum areas, and literally I've had multiple officer and camera moving these people, not just 1 person. So like, I would just question, what was the driver behind that decision, especially being the 1 person to actually do the escort.
You know what? I can actually picture retired Major Soto doing this. Let's say for some reason we had a facility that was severely understaffed, and at that point it's so severe that we got to kind of run it in like 3rd shift mode or lockdown mode, sort of. I could see, and tell me if I'm wrong, Soto, how many officers you have on floor right now in that area? 1? No showers today, no movement, no nothing. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, not only is that the viable solution, it's also something that makes sense, correct? When we're making up policies and we're making up our institutional ways of running things, we always have into concept that, at whatever given time, there may be such a disturbance in the prison that we have to run it at the lowest level possible. So those plans are already there. That's why I love our field, because when things happen in our field, we write it down, and that's what becomes policy, precedent. And then we know what to do in those instances. So if I know that I'm going into a shift and I don't have, it could be Super Bowl Sunday and people are calling out left and right? Just a normal day that I don't think anything's going to happen. But I have that contingency plan where I am going to work at the safest level with the minimal amount of staff that I have. And sometimes that may call, okay, we're going to have to postpone showers today because we don't have the staff to do it safely with. As soon as I have the staff that I need, I will go back to normal running as I would normally do. But we have to think, we can't be, penny smart, dollar foolish. You know what I mean? You can't save money on the back of safety.
You know what, guys? Let's say we do have facilities that are, severely understaffed, because we know that is not enough incentive to keep or maintain. Maybe when we are running short, we should limit those movements, because then that will get word out to the public that we need more. I think what happens is that we start operating as if it's normal, then that becomes the normal. So, I'm sure at one point, maybe we're in dire need, we'll run it with just one. And then when you realize that, hey, nothing's been happening, let's keep on running it with one. Now that becomes the normal. And then the people that come in late, hey, what does policy say? Well, policy said it should be ran by two. But you only wind up looking at it because you're reacting at that point. Something must have happened for us to go back and look at it. It's like, guys, we've been doing it for wrong this whole time. Because I guess, again, no difference than complacency. It's no different than frontline complacency. We go at it, and all of a sudden when something's wrong and we go back to check things, it's like, hey, guys, we haven't been following policy for a while now. So the sad thing is that this practice now could become a norm that people get used to. So they may not even realize that it is a concern, because again, they get so used to it every day that maybe it does take someone from the outside to look and say, hey, guys, why are you doing that with just one? But I think for those in Indiana, from the ones I know, they know for a fact that this has been a concern, especially the old school officers. The old school officers know, man, this is not how we're supposed to run things. And when they put the pressure on management, and I'm not saying specifically for Indiana, just in general, but when those old school officers put the pressure on management and the newer management's not listening, guys, this could be the result. This could be the result. And Gary, you had 28 years in. Even as an inspector, someone with major time, experienced officers, when they're trying to tell you, hey, there's going to be a problem. I know you want to implement this, but this is going to be a problem, or you want to run short, and these are the areas that affect it. This is going to be the problem. Do you listen to them?
Yes. And that goes in the report if I'm the investigator. Now, I can't speak for all investigators, but if they tell me there's a problem with being told to run that dorm and give those showers, and they're being ordered to do that with one officer, as an inspector, I darn well better put that in my report so it can go all the way to the top and it can be seen, because maybe management, as you said, got complacent. And for the officers that are working these shifts, speak up. Speak up. We had a female deputy assigned to a hospital watch right here in Florida with an inmate that was coded, and policy and procedure said must be two officers on that inmate. Short staffed, they thought they could get away with one officer. He needed to go to the restroom. She took him to the restroom. He beat her very badly, and she hung on to that inmate, bleeding, hung on until help came and they finally subdued him. See, there's another example of an incident that can happen in these type of situations. So I'm telling all officers, speak up, say, hey, Sarge, this inmate is high risk, or this inmate is coded for two officers. I really don't feel comfortable taking this inmate out alone. This could be, speak up. And if you have good supervisors, they're going to understand, and they shouldn't get mad at you for speaking up.
And even as I said, you also got to document who you're speaking to, because that shows a level of responsibility. So if you speak, I spoke to the supervisor, well, everybody can diffuse responsibility. But if I spoke to Gangi, now Gangi better do something. You put Gangi in the mix. Now Gangi's going to go to the next supervisor. Yeah. I also want to talk in general based on limited information we got, but PREA. I see a little PREA concern here, and I could be wrong. Again, we're just speaking in general, but females cannot oversee male showers. It can't be. That's a PREA violation. And if by chance, it's not a PREA, it is, because technically when you're watching inmates take showers, you're watching them just to make sure there's no safety and security concerns. So technically, she really is not in a position as a female to be watching men take showers. That's why my concern is they could be making weapons in the showers. They could be doing a bunch of stuff because this officer, maybe, again, limited information. But if you have a female that's watching men shower, you know, hopefully she's smart enough to know I'm not supposed to be doing this. So maybe she's not looking at it 100%. Maybe she's not watching them because that could be a PREA violation. So now you have the inmates that know, well, don't worry, I can do what I want in the shower because it's a female officer watching us today. She's not going to come in. She's not going to check us. So I'm going to go ahead and, you know, make my weapon, grab my weapon, hide my weapon, whatever it is. So again, limited information. But if there is any chance that there's a female watching the males shower, that's a definite PREA violation. What's your thoughts on that, Connie?
So, I mean, certainly we know that that's not something that should be happening. Having sat in on quite a few PREA reviews, you know, you've got inmates who call PREA for much less than that. So certainly you want to, I mean, we don't know exactly how she managed to be there with the showers, but I could certainly see that as an opportunity because she is vulnerable at that time, right? So the opportunity presents itself that there's a female on the tier and like she's responsible for showers, which I don't know. I mean, I hesitate to like weigh in because I'm like, what was really happening for them to make this decision to have her be that escort? I just don't know. Yeah, I'm a little off on this one just because it just seems like something else had to be going on for them to have this be the situation. And it would be, you know, I think there's a good piece of information that's missing from the puzzle that could help us kind of evaluate what really took place.
Yeah, and I think Soto can help us out with this too, because usually when you work in a close custody unit that involves strips on intake, on outtake, you know, definitely the supervising of showers, usually you're supposed to, by PREA, especially anybody that's going to be in direct observation of a naked inmate, has to be someone of that same gender. But I'm going to go with sex, but same gender, using the political term. So even if, you know, let's say I have a camera and it oversees an area where strip is being done, the person that's watching the monitor has to be of the same gender, same sex. So in that report, if I saw a report, just in general, that said a female officer is running showers, right off the bat, from my opinion, and again, my opinion is worth whatever it is, I would automatically see a PREA violation. Soto, what would you see on initial review of that?
Again, we continue to say that we have limited information about the incident because we don't know the policies of this particular prison. We don't know what the circumstances surrounding this unit. We're just assuming that the unit has to be a high risk unit, a lockup, a detention, or a administrative segregation, restrictive housing. You see what the terminology is for different units. I don't see it being a general housing population unit because the little information we know is that the inmate had to be handcuffed in order to be escorted to the shower and then uncuffed so they can go into the shower. And maybe the mechanisms there, they were able to secure him behind the shower. It may be a door, maybe a gate. I don't know. So we don't know those particular instances, but we do know that following PREA guidelines is that we're looking to have someone of the same gender or sex to be doing those things. If we were in a restrictive housing or a, detention type deal or higher custody level unit, we know that most of the times we have the inmates strip searched before they go anywhere, even inside that same unit, if we have to escort them for the purpose of locating any contraband or anything that may have been placed, hidden, or on their body. So I just don't understand how that could happen. And I see the PREA, repercussions and we know that this incident kind of escalated to the highest level. So, I'm not even concerning too much with the PREA aspect of it, as opposed to, we just lost a hero over something that might have been preventable.
Right. And I want to also mention something, just kind of sticking with understaffing a little bit. So when you have facilities that are understaffed, unfortunately, one of the things that we may not be doing, and it's sad to say, but it's true, is because a lot of people are more focused on movements and everything else. Searches are very good preventive measures. Now, by the way, guys, it's tough right now. You have COVID. So I don't know if they're, staff is they're probably under already. Now they're even more under. COVID's hitting a lot of us pretty hard. But searching is something that is a requirement. I would like to think, again, I don't know the policies at this facility, but you should have 3 random searches documented, thoroughly done. I would like to think when searches are done here, definitely some precaution. I'm talking about the tier being locked down, the inmates being secured, and then maybe 2 officers, really doing a search with another officer watching the floor. Because again, I'm not a big fan of the officer that watches the floor also doing the searches, because who's watching the floor? And I do think that you should always have 2 people doing searches. That's just my preference. But you definitely got to have at least 1 doing the search, 1 on the floor. And again, there are 3 random searches, and then you log those searches in. And usually that randomness keeps people on their toes. And then I would assume the later shifts can do public areas, overnight. They could do areas like showers and any other area where inmates can congregate, yard if need be. Maybe early morning when the sun comes up, you could do a yard search, but definitely, I don't know how many shifts this facility is. I think they operate on 12-hour shifts. So you're looking at maybe 6 random cell searches outside of targeted searches, outside of, this is a maximum security facility. I'm assuming we should be coming down there a lot often with, maybe some special operation teams doing some really big searches. But I just want to go back to Lewis one more time, just in regards to policy and procedure. But let's talk about searches. What would you expect if this facility was fully staffed? And since it's not, what are we losing out on?
When a facility is fully staffed, you have a search plan as a policy, and that search plan is something that encompasses searching an amount of cells, like you say, 3 random searches, maybe per shift. But it doesn't have to be limited to 3 searches. It could be more, it could be less, depending. But what you want to do is make sure that maybe in a month's time, you've hit that particular housing unit and every aspect of area of that housing unit at least once, maybe twice in a 30-day span. So that's why you want to have that search plan laid out in such a manner that, you're not hitting the same cell 3, 4, 5 times, because now you're becoming predictable and you know where to hide stuff as far as inmates are concerned. Oh, they never hit my cell, or they hit that cell quite often because he's the popular inmate. He's the one they're keeping an eye on, or she's the one they're keeping an eye on. So again, when you don't have a fully staffed facility, it makes it hard. Everything starts getting to be cut down. Programming is the first thing to go, right? We stop programming. We don't think is, the last thing is security, but you start losing things that are normally being done because you have the staff to do it with. Programming and security go hand in hand, right? The medical department, they need staff, right? When I can tell you, Connie can tell you how she probably knows of departments that have to run with a short amount of staff of nursing staff, where we have to go get per diems in order to cover shifts and cover this. And it's very hard for the even morale goes down when you're like, you know what? This is my 3rd double this week, right? Oh, it may be good overtime, but physically, mentally, health-wise, you're just, it just causes more and more mistakes to happen.
And you know what? After an incident like this happens, the first thing they're going to do probably the next day when they go to break it down is, when were the time these last areas were searched? They're going to go all about searching. The inmate, I see Connie in agreement here. Connie, what's your thoughts about that?
So, I mean, here we go, falling into that culture of reaction as opposed to being proactive, right? So we're not instead of acknowledging that we were running short and sort of taking the accountability, it's kind of one of the shows we did, right? Like, how often do you have, management who's going to take responsibility for that decision, right? Whatever the decision was that night that led to the death of the officer. And so, for me, it's like understanding that there is a consequence to every decision, right? So as Soto's talking about the staffing plan, talking about the security plan, the search plan, there's plans for everything. And there's usually some sort of task force, there's some committee. There's been a lot of effort put in place to get all these plans together. And when we start diverting from the plan, we start leaving ourselves vulnerable to things that were considered when the plan was put in place. And for me, that's really on the medical side of the house. When we start running short, here it is, there's a code on this side of the compound, there's a code on the other side. I only got 2 nurses, right? What are the nurses supposed to do? They've got to establish what is the priority. Where is death imminent, right? Because then that's the one thing that will help support their decision in the long run, right? Like if someone happens to die, right, and they had to make a decision, the justification that they can put is that this person was in imminent danger of death, right? And so I feel like here are all these great plans that are in place. And when we start diverting from those plans, we start opening the door to that vulnerability. And I feel like, here it is in Indiana, they happen to divert from, because I can't imagine that's the plan, right? So the same way we could say, okay, look at the PREA situation that was presented by this. Look at the security issues that were presented by this. There's no way I feel like on paper that was the plan. And it certainly isn't a best practice either, right? Like it could be a past practice. Maybe it was, one day someone made a judgment call, but I just feel like these are the things that we have to think about when we're on post or when we're in facilities and we're making those decisions, whether you're the high level person making the decision. Sometimes it's a matter of touching base to understand what is taking away this post going to do to that unit. Because a lot of times I don't know that that's considered.
Yeah, and I just to kind of piggyback on what Connie's saying, Gary, I mean, you got violations of policy here, which I know as investigators, that's one of the first things you look for. But what about the violation of policy is not the fault of the front line?
Yes, Anthony, one thing I want to say is I don't care if you're short-staffed or full-staffed. As an officer, always stop and think. There's no rush, no rush. Is this inmate dangerous? Of course, all inmates are dangerous. Is this inmate particularly dangerous? Yes, this inmate is high risk. Stop. No rush. Don't try to get the showers done quickly so you can get it done and be done with that and have it over. Stop, think, and then decide, maybe I don't need to open this cell tonight. Maybe we don't need to do showers. Now, Anthony, as you discussed, then I have twofold as an investigator. Now, in this case, my number one is to prosecute this inmate to the fullest extent. I need to do a good, thorough investigation so that I can get this inmate prosecuted. Would I want the death penalty? That's what I would want as a investigator. Sorry, folks, if you're against the death penalty, I don't care. I want the death penalty for this inmate myself as an investigator. So I really want to work hard to get that good investigation going. So that's one thing I want to do. And I'm hoping that the officers preserved all the evidence. The chain of custody forms are filled out properly. The crime scene has been sealed off with tape, hopefully. When I get there, when I arrive, I hope you have a scribe that's taking notes. Who's been in the crime scene, who's been on the scene, who's entered the scene, who's out of the scene. And we want to stop everybody from going in except medical and the investigators from this point forward. Let's hope all that's taking place. Why? Not because I'm saying it as an inspector, you need to do it, because we want to prosecute this inmate. So make sure you get that crime scene secured and that evidence secured. In the end, we want this hero to have something come out of this. We want that inmate prosecuted. Now, after I've done my work on that, getting this inmate prosecuted, seeking the death penalty, I can only seek the death penalty. The courts will do what they're going to do. And I don't know the Indiana laws either. That's a whole nother issue. The second thing I have to do is what went wrong. That is my second part of my investigation, because managers of the prison, the assistant wardens, the majors, the colonels, and higher up are going to want to know, what can we do to improve the situation? What can we do to improve our policies and procedures so this doesn't happen again? So yes, my investigation will detail where policies and procedures followed. Okay, number one, let's get this guy prosecuted. Number two, let's find out what went wrong and try to fix it. Let's don't go headhunting. Let's don't try to take officers' jobs. Let's try to learn what went wrong, do our investigation, and hopefully fix the problem and train better and get better at what we're doing.
And I want you guys to also know something here. There also has to be an effort to protect the inmate that did it, so we can go ahead and prosecute that inmate. There's going to be a lot of lawyers that are going to want to represent this inmate because they're expecting retaliatory action on this inmate. Trust and believe there'll be phone calls because they're expecting that we're going to slip the ball. So I love the fact that the facility, I believe, shipped the inmate out immediately. It's a very, very smart move because, again, staff needs time to heal, you know, and we'll talk about that briefly about why the facility should be locked down for a bit, because you're going to have a lot of generalized animosity. That general animosity can be carried out on any inmate. We have to give staff a chance to heal, even if that requires maybe if the facilities can, you know, maybe bring us some staff over from other facilities to help them out so we can give these warriors some days off. This person was a well-respected supervisor, definitely a hero, and you got to give staff a chance to breathe and really go through their emotions. And again, it's a great move so far by the agency in getting that inmate out in the effort to let's get that death penalty. And obviously, I will say one thing too. It looks like as hard as it must have been for these brave warriors to do what they did, looks like the inmate was handled professionally to that point. And I know that's very, very hard to do, but I promise you in the long run, it helps the investigators and it helps them push for that death penalty. Now, hey, Soto, I want to go back to you real quick because one of the concerns that we also want to talk about is equipment. Now, we're working in a max unit. By the way, inmates are inmates. I always think that, you know, it doesn't matter who you're dealing with. A facility should issue the gear, you know, as needed, whether you're in a min unit or a max unit. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, there'll be more things required in max because you're doing those transports or those escorts. But having said that, you know, I believe all officers, no matter what level of custody, should be issued vests. Some level of de-escalation, like an OC spray. You know, I know some facilities, well, you don't get a vest or OC spray unless you're in a max unit. Well, I disagree with that. But Soto, what's your thoughts on just having officers equipped? What tools do we need?
You know what? I like to dabble in construction every now and then, right? And I wouldn't try to remodel any type or part of my home without the proper equipment, right? I wouldn't want to put up cabinets or new cabinets in my kitchen without having not only the tools, but someone to assist me to hang up those cabinets, right? But we think that we can take shortcuts and not equip our staff with the proper equipment that they need. I mean, you're setting us up for failure if you don't let me use what is there available. Again, I don't know what Indiana can use, but you mentioned OC, you mentioned, you know, handcuffs, batons, anything that we put on our body as additional gear, right? Like a simple vest. I know we in our department wore vests, right? And it only came about after, unfortunately, one of our officers losing their life. You know, it sat on somebody's desk waiting for a signature. And I'm sure, again, I'm sorry to say it, we can always go on budget issues, but it was sitting on somebody's desk because they were thinking over how much it was going to cost to outfit the department in its entirety with vests. And unfortunately, one of our brothers had to die. And then within a week, all of a sudden, we all get vests. If you have the equipment, please give it to our brothers and sisters so they can perform their job in a safe manner, in a great manner, and it keeps the department professional. at all times.
Yeah, and guys, I will say one thing: the agency should be responsible for getting that equipment. I know there's some agencies where the officers have to pay for their own vest. Come on, or you don't have the right size, so the officer has to go to work without the vest. I'm sorry, we don't have XXX, so therefore we don't have a vest for you. Okay, well, that person gets paid until you do. I'm sorry not to be an ass, but that's. Oh, go ahead, Soto.
And also, I just wanted, before we forget, because we're talking about different things and the limited information that we have, but we do have that information. There was a stabbing that happened. You know what I mean? So when you talk about, do we have to lock down the facility? Absolutely, because security-wise, it makes sense. Secondly, I need to find out where the implements that were used as contraband, as a weapon, I got to find out where that came from, right? How did it get to this secure unit? What did they make it out of? Is there more out there? So we have to search and we have to do things like that. Again, give us the proper equipment to do our searches with. Give us the proper staff to do our searches with. Slow everything down to the point where now we are secure before we move on. Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure we cover that.
No, by all means. And Gary, I would like to think that when the facility's locked down, that does help with your investigation, correct?
The lockdown is imperative, and we always hope that when we get the call, we try to get there as quick as we can. Investigators, when they get there, it's already happened. So we're hoping, as I said earlier, the crime scene is taken care of, the evidence is collected, but that the prison is locked down. Several reasons. We have to go interview staff witnesses, and we have to interview inmate witnesses. Now, a lot of people go, who cares what the inmates have to say? Well, we still have to interview inmate witnesses. There's cells next to this incident with inmates. And believe it or not, sometimes we'll luck out and an inmate will sing a song to us and tell us what they saw. Okay, will his statement hold up great in court? Maybe, maybe not. We need the officer statements. We need the nurses' statements. But what those inmates saw can help us a lot in leading us to different areas that we need to discover evidence. And also the lockdown in most investigations. When I had an investigation of aggravated assault on an officer or a death, I did 3 death investigations. They were all inmate on inmate. When I did those death investigations, we searched that entire dorm or pod or whatever you call it in your state. We did a shakedown of that place to find out what we could discover. So it is very imperative that you lock down everybody, move all witnesses away so they can't talk to each other as far as the inmates go. And the lockdown also prevents something further happening. Why would you not lock down the prison? You think that just because this happened in dorm D, that dorm H isn't getting fired up and dorm J isn't getting fired up when they hear about it? Lock down the entire prison, not just that section, just till we get things in order and we find what we need to find.
Right. It shows a vulnerability that we definitely have to discover. And I think by having a facility locked down and not being rushed, because you can still feed the inmates, you can still tend to their needs, if it's medical controlled movements, whatever it is, but to let the investigators do what they need to do so we can go ahead and push for proper prosecution. Sometimes the public will push to alleviate the lockdown, but the problem is that now you're rushing the case. And now the concern is that justice won't be done. And I know Connie was taking a lot of notes, so I'm very interested to see where Connie's going with those notes.
So here's the thing. All I keep thinking is that, in the heat of these events, right? I'm thinking about, Gary saying you've got to preserve the evidence and chain of custody, and all these things just sound very routine. And so do they sound routine because that's what we've done in our facilities, or are those practices that we have throughout the industry, right? Because, being able to count on knowing that there's going to be a lockdown and that, you're going to be able to go in and do the investigation to be able to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law, right? like, I don't, for some reason, I just feel like, are we going to be able to see that in this instance, right? Where it may not be the same sort of routine thinking that we have that was going on in this facility, right?
Well, I think you got Gary and Soto that both want to attack that. So Gary, do you want to go first?
Yes, Connie, you're exactly right. You know, we actually did in Florida a training video where we went to a prison and we let the officers be in the video. And we did different scenarios of incidents that occur in a dorm. And we videotaped the reactions and officers responding to the incident. And those videotapes from the Inspector General in Florida was sent out statewide so that they could show this to the officers, to show what, you know, we need to help prosecute, to show how to do a crime scene, to show that we need everything locked down and all these things. And does everybody do that? I don't know. We need some good training on what to do when these incidents occur. How many officers really know that when this goes down, boom, set up a crime scene, get the evidence, you know, first thing first, of course, is medical emergency, get medical there. How many officers really know the routine to preserving these things?
And I know, Soto, obviously, I know in your time, you were very big on preservation of the crime scene. I mean, to the point where that's zero tolerance for you. I know that. What's your thoughts on what Connie was asking?
It's a very valid question. I think we take it for granted that a lot of people do and take into heed what needs to be done in case of. But do you think that New York does the same as New Jersey, does the same as California, does the same as Texas? I mean, you're talking about big correctional states that kind of all are vying for that power, saying, yeah, I think I do it better than you do, or they think they do it differently because it serves and within their policies better. The good thing about nowadays is that you have channels like this one, right? Tier Talk, that we are openly talking about strategies, best practices, like you said, Connie, that help us, because you don't just have frontline officers looking at social media and other networking avenues. You have higher administrative people. I can't tell you how many people, because of Tier Talk and other networking channels, have contacted me. Hey, what would you do in this situation? Have you come across this? And we share information. So I'm hopeful that nowadays, with the new, social media and all of these network sites that we have, that it's getting better and people are being more proactive into learning what to do when something arises.
Yeah, and before we wrap up discussion, just one more round on what we would expect after the loss of an officer. You definitely need some team there, like a critical incident stress management team. Hopefully we have one available, and that should be a team that's automatically sent out. Don't wait for the request. Send that team out. That team needs to be active. They need to walk around the facility, get to introduce themselves to staff, and trust and believe. If they wait, no one's going to go to them. But if they go out and they communicate, people will start opening up, because there has to be a level of trust. But right now you have to rebuild. There's a lot to rebuild. So it's not even just about, yes, we got to prosecute this inmate. We got to do what we got to do. But we also cannot forget that we have a staff that, they're stricken. They're full with grief. Their morale is down. So we need to do what we can to have them not just have faith in themselves, because they can also be thinking, this could have been me. But they also have to have faith in the agency. Can they trust you now? And this comes in how we care for them afterwards. So one thing right off the bat, I'll mention it first, a CISM team, some team to go on site to talk them through it and just kind of allow them that moment to grieve. And the agency has to allow that, even if that includes limited movement, whatever it is, staff has to build that level of trust. And also, again, with the lockdown, another reason, just in case, you're going to have a lot of staff that's angry, that's not going to know how to deal with that anger. It's reasonable. And anybody that wears an inmate uniform could be a target in their mind, because they're going to probably generalize their feelings from the one and kind of generalize it out, project it to the many. And that's something that's normal. Guys, it's normal. I'm not saying it's the right thing, but it's normal. So we need to get them to kind of reprocess that thought process. But Soto, just in curiosity, what do you think should be done now to kind of push the facility into a healing mode?
Once the incident has been fully investigated, and trying to get some normalcy, you have to remember that, in order for that facility to shine, for that facility to go and progress and heal, it has to start with your staff. Your staff is they're your gold. They're the ones that are going to go out there every day, do the job, but you have to show that you care for them. You have to show that, you want to have resources available that they can tap and they can say, I need to express how I feel right now. I need to know what it could be: sadness, it could be anger, it could be anything, frustration that they need to get out so that we can move on and go back to normal practices in the prison itself. Obviously, it's going to take a minute. It's going to take some time. Supervisors have to be kind of made aware, right? Because we have to be professional at all times. We can't just look out for retribution, which could get us in danger. But you have to understand, like you said, Gangi, it's kind of normal. It's human nature that, someone hurt me and I feel like I have to get vengeance or hurt someone else. And that's where we have to draw the line.
Yeah, and I also want to mention too, guys, when a major incident occurs at a facility, it could be divisive in nature because people will be looking to point the finger as opposed to standing up. This is the time to stand up, and if there's mistakes made, we have to get it out there because you can't cover it on the rug. You can't cover it under the rug because it's not going to do anything to prevent it from happening again. So when these happen, we need to get to the table and really discuss what could have been done better or what aren't we doing enough of. Equipment. Do we have the proper staffing? This is, again, a time to step up and really have that discussion, because in the end, if you don't do that, then this hero dies in vain. I mean, 100%. But Gary, what's your thoughts after the incident occurs, the healing, the rebuilding? What needs to be done?
Well, I feel that the officers need to stand together, and the entire agency needs to stand together and stand strong. Don't point fingers, as you and the major have mentioned. Don't point fingers at anybody. That's not going to do any good. Don't blame other people. Let's just get together. Let's support each other. Let's support the family of the victim, the family and the coworkers. The people that were involved in this incident are going to be reliving this incident for a long time. It's going to be in their mind and their hearts. And we need to have a support system ready. We need to hold each other strong and help each other. No time for pointing fingers, no time for blaming, no time for arguments. Just be together as a team and work together and help each other through this terrible incident. It's the toughest job. I swear, they talk about tough jobs. You can talk about the street. You can talk about military. I was in the military. You lose a lot of lives there too. But look at the correctional officers. This is a tough job. This job takes guts. I mean, I'm not trying to use that old adjective, but it does. It takes guts. And when these incidents happen, they happen, and they're going to happen, unfortunately, again. We know that when we go into it, but that's why correctional officers are a special breed of toughness. Please stay together. Look for help. If you have any issues, please ask somebody for help.
And Connie, I'd like to ask you the same question too. So in rebuild, morale, just to kind of make sure that staff is ready to begin again. What do you think the facility needs to do?
So I think the facility has to really be understanding that everyone is going to be grieving differently, right? And given that, yes, there may be some staffing shortages or what have you, people actually need time to disconnect a little bit. So giving those who request time off, like, you just got to give it to them, right? I just feel like, it is one of those points where, something major has happened. Some people will be in denial for a long time. Others will be very angry. They go through the bargaining, depression, acceptance. It's a whole process, and it happens on its own time scale, right? Everyone has their own time scale for going through that. And so as I think about that, I think about the agency being very proactive in providing resources. So I think, yes, having a team come is great. I think also too, like, so what do I want? What else can I do, right? Like, so do we have EAP available? Is it on site? Do they have to go someplace in order to get that support if they feel they need additional support? Because I feel it's the way we wrap support around the staff that kind of helps them understand that we do care about them, right? Because in this instance, it's now, how do we rebuild the trust, right? Because you talk about the divisiveness when people start pointing fingers, right? So who made the decision for that person to be the escort? Who made the decision for that unit to have the one person, right? And it is that feeling of, it could have been me, right? And so how do I make sure that I still have the same confidence in this system that put one of my brothers or sisters in jeopardy, right? And I feel like we have to acknowledge and sort of take ownership that someone made a decision, this was the outcome, and based on that outcome, we now have a lot of work to do to rebuild staff morale, to rebuild trust, and then to get people confident again. Some people might get to the point where they just don't care. They're like, listen, whatever. They don't care about us. I don't care about them, right? Like, we're going to have to start kind of paying attention to when, we start seeing things slip, right? And I think that's the human nature of it, right? Like, I don't give a shit no more. Like, look what just happened. Like, how do we help rebuild sort of that meaning in people again when something like this major has happened? I think we have to be very intentional about doing that.
Right. And just to touch again real quick before we come to a close, the divisiveness. This is the time where we need to reinforce our united front. Our spirit's been hit hard, but this is the time where we have to remind people that we're together and that the inmates need to see that united front. So again, guys, stand up. If there's concerns, get the concerns addressed. Don't hide it. Don't be selfish. Because at the end, if this happens again and you had information in your mind that could have stopped it, because really, this shouldn't be us having this dialogue. This should be the agency, but if they don't want to have the dialogue, then we'll do it here. Because even we may not know specifically, we still ask or put out some good information that could give people the right questions to ask. I think that's the concern. Sometimes we're so quick to hide the information that could benefit the lives of the staff because for whatever reason, because they feel that's going to point the finger on one of those people in the higher positions, that the people don't know what questions to ask to get real effective change. Well, this is the show. We just pretty much covered in general, I'm sure some of the concerns that could bring up the right questions for people that want to make the change and for people that aren't so into their pride that they're willing to step up and say, I could have done this better, because you have to now. Hey, Gary, you have anything you want to say in closing?
I just want to say that our prayers and thoughts go out to the family and friends of everybody involved in this incident, because it's not just the deceased, but the people who were involved. It's gonna be with them for a long time. Prayers for you, prayers for the family and friends. You work hard, and we appreciate everything you officers do on the front line. You are appreciated. You are strong, and keep strong. And thank you for your service.
Soto, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, I would like to echo Gary's sentiment of prayers going out to the family and, obviously of our fallen hero, Lieutenant Lasco, and, another hero that also put his life at risk along with others that responded to this code. But Sergeant Smith, we hope that he recovers and safely comes back to work, hopefully. But prayers out for his family and his loved ones as well.
Yes, Sergeant Patrick Schmidt, SCHMITT, Schmidt. I'm sorry, Sergeant Patrick Schmidt. Yes, obviously, prayers to him himself, speedy recovery. I'm hearing he's doing better, so let's keep those prayers coming. Connie, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
I would just like to say these events really just shake everybody. And, even as I'm thinking about it, I'm remembering an event that I experienced. And so, as Gary said, these like the thoughts, the memory, all those things are going to kind of just replay for a long time in your mind. And so I would just like to add, please don't be so strong that you don't go get help, right? Like if you feel you're having a hard time processing, dealing with this event, this was lives lost, this was an attack, we weren't there to see, right? But what you witnessed, what you heard, what you smelled, those are the things that are going to continue to sort of come back to you. And so it is okay to not be okay. And it is okay to go get professional support if you need it. So I would just, implore anyone who needs it to please go get help.
Hey guys, obviously this is something that, we don't want to be discussing. I mean, the death of a hero hits us all in this community. But one thing I would like to add before we go is that it also brings us together. I posted this on Facebook, and the love and support from all over the nation. I mean, I would go as far as saying all over the world. So we need to keep that going. I think that if we work together, we could bring some consistency. So when we're having that dialogue, we're all on the same page, we're all using the same language, and we can actually communicate on a level that can really be effective. But in the end, we lost a hero. I'm actually going to dedicate this episode to Eugene Lasco's grandson, who did comment on my board. Just want to remind him again that your grandfather is a hero and will be remembered by this profession as a hero. Again, he is someone we all strive to be. So just horrible that we had to meet him this way. That's the sad thing. I'm sure he's someone we would all walk a tear with any day of the week and know that person had our back. Hey, as always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.